Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. Power doesn't announce itself, it rearranges the room. There comes a point when silence stops being passive and starts being strategic. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear or exhaustion, but the kind that sharpens focus, tightens discipline, and unsettles anyone who built comfort around your hesitation. This is the phase most people misunderstand. They think nothing is happening. They think you've stalled. They think you've lost momentum. In reality, something far more dangerous to opposition is taking place: alignment. Here's a fact most people don't like to sit with. Nearly every major shift in influence, leadership, or dominance happens long before the public ever notices. The noise comes later. The preparation is always private. History doesn't reward the loudest presence in the room. It rewards the one who quietly mastered timing, access, and control while everyone else was busy narrating their importance. And let's be honest for a second, the world is addicted to spectacle. People expect power to look dramatic, emotional, even chaotic. They expect tantrums, clapbacks, long explanations, and public battles. That's why disciplined silence makes them uncomfortable. It denies them entertainment. It denies them leverage. It denies them the illusion that they still know what you're thinking. Some will laugh. Some will relax. Some will assume you're harmless now. That's the funny part. History shows that underestimation has funded more regrets than arrogance ever did. Silence isn't absence. It's a repositioning. It's you stepping off the stage so the architecture can change without interruption. This isn't about revenge, theatrics, or proving anything to anyone. It's about reaching a level where your moves speak before your mouth ever needs to. Where enemies don't get silenced by confrontation, but by irrelevance. Where power stops being something you perform and becomes something you apply. So if you've been quiet lately, good. That's not a warning sign. That's the sound of recalibration. And trust me, it usually ends with someone else realizing they misread the room. Number 1, you stop trying to be understood and start being precise. Most people waste their energy trying to explain themselves to the wrong audience. They bend over backward, justify every move, and clarify every intention, thinking that being understood is the same as being respected. But here's the brutal truth. No one owes you comprehension. People will twist your words, misread your motives, and try to frame your clarity as arrogance. When you operate from the need to be understood, you hand over power. You make yourself negotiable, debatable, and susceptible to manipulation. Precision, on the other hand, is silent dominance. It's about doing what needs to be done in the cleanest, most direct way possible, leaving no gaps for interpretation. When your actions are precise, they carry authority without explanation. You don't have to defend your choices. The clarity of execution does it for you. You stop drowning in conversations and start leading outcomes. Precision creates a fortress around your intention. It's measurable, tangible, and impossible to misrepresent. People can't argue with results that are delivered with exactness. It forces recognition without entitlement. You stop seeking approval and start commanding attention. And the beauty of this approach is that it frustrates the people who want to keep you small. When they try to twist your actions, there's nothing to grab. Precision leaves no emotional loopholes. It's calculated, controlled, and consistent. This doesn't mean you're cold or distant. It means you've upgraded from chaos to strategy. You learn to focus on what matters and cut everything else out. The debates, the explanations, the side opinions that never mattered. Every move becomes deliberate. Every word carries weight. Every gesture has purpose. That's the real power of being precise. You stop pleading for comprehension and start delivering inevitability. People may still misunderstand, they may still resist, but the difference is now irrelevant. When you are precise, you are untouchable in your execution, And that is a quiet, unshakable form of authority that no one can argue with. Number 2. You outgrow the need to prove you're chosen. Being chosen is a feeling that grows in quiet confidence, not in constant announcements. Most people spend their lives trying to convince the world that they are exceptional, that they matter more than others, or that destiny favors them. They post, they brag, they compete for recognition, and they look exhausted while doing it. But true power never needs permission. It doesn't send invitations or beg for attention. When you outgrow the need to prove you're chosen, you stop performing for external validation and start moving according to your own standards. The world will notice eventually, but by then it will be too late for detractors to intervene. This shift changes everything about how you operate. You no longer weigh every reaction, monitor every impression, or obsess over who is watching. Your energy is no longer scattered across attempts to impress. It's concentrated on growth, strategy, and mastery. The funny part is that this is what makes people start talking anyway. When you stop seeking recognition, recognition finds you, and it carries far more weight because it is unsolicited. Outgrowing the need to prove anything also creates a kind of immunity to gossip, judgment, and sabotage. People who once felt they could influence your story suddenly realize you no longer need their approval. You stop getting pulled into petty arguments and instead focus on the work that actually moves you forward. There's a freedom in this that is impossible to fake. It allows you to act from integrity rather than insecurity, from strategy rather than desperation. And over time, the people who matter, the ones aligned with your vision, will naturally cluster around you, drawn by the quiet authority of someone who knows their worth without asking anyone to confirm it. This is when your energy stops being about proving you exist and starts being about making things happen, about shaping environments and outcomes in ways that can't be ignored. In that space, being chosen isn't a claim you make. It's a fact everyone else eventually has to accept. Number 3. You learn that access is the real battlefield. Most people think battles are fought with words, strength, or influence, but the truth is far more subtle and far more dangerous. The real fight is over access. Access to people, information, resources, and opportunities is where power quietly wins or quietly dies. If someone can't reach you, manipulate you, or influence your environment, their ability to hurt or control you evaporates. Enemies don't always need to attack directly. They simply position themselves where they can poke, prod, and interfere. That's why understanding access becomes critical. Controlling who can approach you, who can affect your trajectory, and who even knows your strategy is the hidden work that separates those who rise from those who struggle. It's not about cutting people off out of arrogance or paranoia. It's about recognizing that proximity is leverage. When you guard your access, you force every interaction to have purpose and every presence to carry alignment. Those who waste your time, spread confusion, or thrive on chaos are denied proximity, which silently removes their power over you. And this doesn't just apply to others. It applies to yourself too. Uncontrolled access to your own time, thoughts, and energy is just as dangerous. Being available to every distraction or every fleeting obligation dilutes your focus, makes your strategy sloppy, and invites mistakes that your enemies will exploit. Mastering access means making deliberate choices about who and what occupies your space, and it creates a natural filter that strengthens your influence. It turns every encounter into a calculated advantage and every absence into a statement of intent. Over time, people start noticing that you're not easily reached, not because you're distant or detached, but because you've redefined what matters and who matters in your life. That realization alone can disarm opposition faster than any confrontation. Access isn't just control, it's power in plain sight. And the ones who underestimate it end up constantly chasing what they will never touch. When you understand this, you don't just win battles, you quietly own the battlefield. Number 4, you replace emotional reactions with strategic timing. Most people mistake quick responses for strength, believing that reacting immediately proves power, courage, or control. The reality is the opposite. Emotional reactions are like sparks in a dry forest. They create noise, chaos, and temporary attention, but they rarely produce lasting results. The truly powerful understand that timing is far more important than intensity. Strategic timing transforms every action from random energy into calculated impact. When you stop reacting emotionally, you stop giving people the satisfaction of predictability. Opponents often study behavior to find weakness, and emotional responses are like flashing neon signs pointing directly to it. Waiting, observing, and calculating allows you to act when the conditions are most favorable, when the impact is unavoidable, and when the consequences ripple far beyond the initial action. Strategic timing doesn't mean inaction. It means deliberate motion. It means knowing when silence will hurt more than words, when patience will achieve more than force, and when restraint will be more powerful than confrontation. People underestimate how much fear, confusion, and respect you can generate simply by choosing the moment of action. There's also a personal benefit. Emotions are exhausting. Reacting immediately burns energy, clouds judgment, and leaves traces of vulnerability that others exploit. By controlling your timing, you conserve strength, sharpen clarity, and maintain authority. Actions delivered at the right time feel inevitable, almost unstoppable, because they are both unexpected and perfectly placed. Opponents begin to doubt themselves, colleagues respect your judgment, and your own confidence grows because you're no longer hostage to impulse. In life, the difference between chaos and control, between noise and influence, is rarely the action itself, it's when you act. Strategic timing elevates you above the fray, turns patience into power, and transforms calculated steps into silent victories. Mastering timing is like mastering gravity. You can't see it, but it determines the trajectory of everything in its path. When you act deliberately, not emotionally, you don't just respond to the world, you shape it. Number 5. You stop confusing loneliness with loss. One of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that being alone doesn't mean you've lost something. It often means you've gained clarity. People fear loneliness because they mistake it for rejection or failure, but in reality, it's a sign that the universe, life, or circumstances are clearing space for what truly matters. When you stop confusing loneliness with loss, everything shifts. You start to see the people who walked away not as a wound to heal, but as a filter working on your behalf. The absence that once felt painful now feels necessary. It's in those moments of solitude that your priorities sharpen, your strategy strengthens, and your focus becomes unshakable. The truth is, loss teaches you lessons, but loneliness teaches you power. When you're alone, there's no distraction, no compromise, no noise from those who don't belong in your story. You have time to assess, to plan, and to build yourself without interference. Most people never embrace this because they fear judgment, they crave validation, or they feel incomplete without constant connection. But those who learn to walk alone realize that the world adapts to them when they're whole, not when they're desperate for approval. Loneliness becomes a tool, a quiet teacher that forces you to confront who you really are, what you really want, and who you truly need in your life. And the irony is that this clarity eventually attracts exactly what aligns with your energy: people, opportunities, and circumstances that would have never fit into the chaos of compromise. What once seemed like loss turns out to be liberation. Your solitude is no longer a void, but a preparation ground, a forge where resilience, confidence, and strategy are strengthened. The moment you understand this, absence stops being a threat and starts being a weapon. You're no longer defined by who left or what disappeared. You're defined by how you used the space they vacated. Loneliness becomes not a punishment, but an advantage, the silent proving ground for the life you were always meant to command. Number 6, you realize not everyone who claps wants you standing. Applause is easy. Recognition is cheap. People will cheer, nod, and smile when it's convenient, when it costs them nothing, or when they see a benefit for themselves. But the moment you step into true growth, the kind that disrupts comfort and challenges the status quo, applause can quickly turn into resistance. Understanding this is brutal but liberating. Not everyone who celebrates you actually wants to see you succeed. Some want the idea of you, the version that exists in their convenience, not the reality that demands they adjust or admit they were wrong. When you realize this, you stop measuring your progress by others' approval and start measuring it by results, alignment, and internal consistency. People will try to fit you into their narrative, comment on your speed, or critique your methods, all while pretending they are supportive. That's where discernment becomes critical. Claps without context are often camouflage for envy, insecurity, or a desire to manipulate. True allies rarely clap from a distance. They act, they align, they show up when stakes are real, not when it's performative. Recognizing this doesn't make you cynical, it makes you precise. It forces you to invest in relationships and environments that are built on mutual respect, shared vision, and authentic engagement. You stop being distracted by superficial support and start noticing patterns, intentions, and behaviors that actually matter. It also sharpens your judgment of influence. When applause fades in the face of challenge, you see who remains, and that clarity is invaluable. The people who truly matter will stay even when it's inconvenient, difficult, or uncomfortable. The ones who were only clapping for spectacle will reveal themselves, leaving you with a leaner, stronger circle. Understanding that not everyone who claps wants you standing teaches you one of the most powerful lessons. External validation is irrelevant. What matters is alignment, integrity, and the courage to rise regardless of who is clapping or who isn't. In that space, you become untouchable by opinion, immune to envy, and unshakable in your purpose. Number 7, you become predictable in values, but unpredictable in execution. True power lies in the tension between certainty and surprise. When people know where you stand on principles, morals, and boundaries, they feel they understand you. But the moment you pair that clarity with unpredictable execution, you become unstoppable. Being predictable in values builds trust, respect, and credibility. People know you won't compromise on what matters, and that makes them cautious about testing your limits. But predictable behavior in action alone is weak. If every move can be anticipated, strategy becomes irrelevant, and influence evaporates. That's why execution must be fluid, adaptive, and at times completely unexpected. When you act in ways that surprise even those who study you, you control the narrative without ever needing to justify yourself. Predictable values anchor your identity. Unpredictable execution makes you untouchable. This combination frustrates competition because it creates an environment where they can never calculate or manipulate your next move. They see the framework of your ethics, but the moves within that framework are invisible, almost untouchable. You stop being someone to debate or sway, and you become someone to reckon with. This approach also has a hidden psychological advantage. It forces people to respect you quietly. When they know you won't bend morally, but they can't predict your next step, hesitation becomes their default response. They start second-guessing their own plans and questioning whether they should act at all. Meanwhile, you maintain clarity and freedom. Every action has intention, every move carries leverage, every decision reinforces your identity. Being predictable in values but unpredictable in execution is not about playing games. It's about mastering control without chaos. It's about being anchored in integrity while remaining dynamic and uncontainable. That's how influence becomes undeniable. People may try to anticipate you, but they can't. They may analyze your patterns, but they fail. Your consistency in what you stand for becomes the shield, and your unpredictability in action becomes the sword. When these two forces combine, you operate in a space where resistance is futile and alignment is inevitable. Number 8, you accept that some people need you. Small to feel safe. One of the hardest truths to face is realizing that not everyone wants your growth, success, or power to flourish. Some people only feel secure when you remain contained, restrained, or diminished in their presence. It's not personal, it's instinctive. Their comfort relies on your limitation, and the moment you push past their invisible boundaries, discomfort turns into subtle resistance, criticism, or even sabotage. Accepting this truth doesn't make you bitter. It makes you aware. It allows you to stop trying to force alignment where none exists. People who need you small will always resist the reality of your expansion. They will question your decisions, belittle your achievements, or quietly test your patience, hoping you'll shrink back into a version of yourself that fits neatly into their sense of control. Recognizing this is liberating because it removes the weight of approval. You no longer measure your value by how safe you make others feel. Instead, you measure it by your own growth, integrity, and purpose. It also sharpens your judgment. You begin to see who genuinely supports your elevation versus who tolerates it only conditionally. This awareness allows you to invest energy wisely and protect your progress. Some relationships will naturally end, and some spaces will no longer be hospitable, but that's part of growth. True advancement is rarely convenient, and it often makes others uncomfortable simply because they were never meant to walk at your level. Accepting this doesn't make you ruthless, it makes you strategic. You stop negotiating your potential to fit someone else's comfort zone and start creating conditions where your influence and presence are undeniable. And here's the quiet, powerful irony. The people who thrive alongside your expansion will show up effortlessly, while those who needed you small will gradually fall away, leaving room for alignment, momentum, and authentic support. Understanding this distinction is a game changer. When you accept that some people need you small to feel safe, you stop shrinking, start rising, and reclaim the energy that was once wasted on trying to appease the wrong people. Growth becomes unstoppable because it no longer negotiates with fear. Number 9, you stop fighting people and start outsmarting systems. Most people get caught up in the idea of defeating individual opponents. They focus on arguments, rivalries, or personal battles, thinking that victory comes from winning over someone else. But the harsh reality is that people are temporary, unpredictable, and often inconsequential in the grand scheme. The real battlefield isn't a person, it's the system, the structure, the patterns that govern outcomes. When you shift your focus from fighting individuals to outsmarting systems, your influence multiplies exponentially. Systems are repeatable, predictable, and scalable. They dictate opportunities, resources, and power long after personalities have faded. Understanding this allows you to move strategically instead of reactively. You stop wasting energy on petty conflicts and start analyzing patterns, weaknesses, and leverage points within the structures around you. It's where foresight becomes your weapon. While others argue, complain, or try to manipulate people, you position yourself in ways that ensure the system works for you, not against you. This approach also neutralizes most opposition automatically. If the system favors your position, individual attempts to derail you become irrelevant. You don't need to win every argument or prove every point. The architecture already protects and amplifies your influence. Outsmarting systems doesn't require confrontation. It requires observation, timing, and calculated action. It means understanding incentives, rules, and flow, and then placing yourself where impact is unavoidable. It's quiet, it's effective, and it's deeply frustrating to those who thrive on drama and personal attacks. Eventually, they realize that while they've been battling shadows, you've been shaping reality itself. This strategy also builds resilience. Systems don't collapse easily, and when they favor you, your progress becomes consistent and less dependent on individual whims. Fighting people may win small skirmishes, but outsmarting systems wins long-term control. It elevates your position, consolidates influence, and makes resistance nearly impossible. When you stop reacting to individuals and start mastering the environment they operate in, you move from being a participant in the game to being the one who sets the rules. And in that space, true power becomes undeniable. Number 10, you learn that discipline hurts more than betrayal and works better. Most people think betrayal is the ultimate pain, the kind that leaves scars and shakes confidence, but the deeper truth is that discipline cuts sharper and lasts longer. Betrayal is sudden, emotional, and often out of your control. You get hurt, recover, and eventually move on, but it's temporary, reactive pain. Discipline, on the other hand, is constant, intentional, and self-imposed. It demands you face discomfort daily, resist temptations, and push yourself through repetition and monotony when every instinct screams for ease. That's why it hurts more. Waking up early when your body wants to sleep, practicing relentlessly when results seem invisible, holding yourself accountable when no one is watching. These are small daily cuts that pile up over time. And yet, while it stings, discipline is the force that actually builds power. Betrayal can derail you, but discipline shapes you. It molds character, sharpens focus, and creates a foundation that no external attack can easily shake. The people who rely on shortcuts or luck crumble under pressure, while those who embrace discipline accumulate invisible advantages: strength, skill, stamina, and foresight. Discipline doesn't offer applause or validation. It works quietly, steadily, and relentlessly. It teaches patience and precision, turning potential energy into unstoppable action. And here's the harsh honesty most people avoid. Those who master discipline rarely need to worry about betrayal in the long run. Their preparation, habits, and consistency make them resilient, untouchable, in ways that reactive responses can never achieve. Pain from betrayal fades. Pain from discipline endures, but it also transforms you. It becomes your engine, your silent weapon, the edge that separates the capable from the exceptional. When you internalize this, you stop fearing external threats and start respecting your own capacity. Discipline becomes not a burden, but a declaration. You are willing to endure what others won't, to build what others can't, and to rise beyond the chaos of circumstance. It's the kind of hurt that doesn't just pass. It accumulates into strength, influence, and undeniable power. Number 11. You no longer chase closure from those who benefited from confusion. One of the quietest, most liberating shifts in life is realizing that some people never intended to give you closure. They thrived on ambiguity, delay, and the fog of misunderstanding because it benefited them. For years, You may have chased explanations, apologies, or validation from them, believing that knowing why would bring peace. But the truth is, those who benefit from confusion rarely change. They gain control from your attempts to make sense of their actions, to untangle their motives, or to justify your own experience. Chasing closure from them is like trying to empty a cup with a hole in the bottom. It feels productive, but nothing fills. Letting go of this pursuit is both terrifying and empowering. It forces you to acknowledge that your peace cannot depend on someone else's honesty, morality, or willingness to confront their own flaws. True closure comes internally, from understanding that their behavior reflects them, not you. It comes from accepting that their actions were never about fairness, respect, or alignment. It was about opportunity, convenience, or self-interest. When you stop seeking external closure, you reclaim time, energy, and authority over your own narrative. You stop replaying conversations, analyzing motives, or wondering if you could have done something differently. The mental space once occupied by confusion now becomes a foundation for clarity, focus, and decisive action. This shift also changes how you interact with the world. You no longer grant your attention or influence to those who are misaligned or toxic. You conserve it for people, systems, and opportunities that actually matter. And ironically, this is when real accountability appears, not from those who hurt you, but from life itself. Actions, consequences, and patterns unfold in ways that reveal truth far more effectively than confrontation ever could. Chasing closure is the luxury of someone still under someone else's influence. Rejecting it is the mark of someone who has stepped fully into their own authority. By making peace internally, you turn what once felt like a wound into a compass, guiding you toward alignment, freedom, and results that no one can obscure or manipulate. Number 12, you understand that power is boring when it's real. True power doesn't scream. It doesn't need to be flashy, loud, or dramatic. It's not about being the center of attention or dominating conversations. The people who mistake noise for influence often burn themselves out trying to prove they matter, creating spectacle instead of substance. Real power, on the other hand, is quiet, consistent, and deeply effective. It's boring in the sense that it doesn't seek validation or applause. It moves without interruption, delivers results without commentary, and shapes outcomes without requiring anyone to notice the effort. The boringness of real power is its secret weapon. It frustrates observers because it can't be undermined, debated, or manipulated easily. Those who are used to drama assume that if someone isn't performing theatrically, they're weak, distracted, or irrelevant. But in reality, the quietly powerful are always 3 steps ahead. They are executing while others are reacting. They are building while others are explaining. And because real power doesn't rely on optics, it's resilient. It isn't shaken by opinion, envy, or criticism. It survives gossip, scrutiny, and interference because it is grounded in strategy, discipline, and preparation, not ego or attention. Being boring in this sense also frees you. You're no longer chained to appearances or constant performance. You don't need to respond to every challenge, clarify every action, or defend every decision. Your impact comes from execution and results, not from how loudly you announce them. Over time, people start noticing the effects rather than the effort. Your influence spreads naturally, and your authority becomes undeniable, precisely because it doesn't need theatrics to exist. The unglamorous consistency of real power is what makes it unstoppable. While others are exhausted by drama and performance, you operate from clarity, precision, and control. It is in this quiet, boring, relentless application of energy that dominance is born. Real power doesn't ask to be seen. It simply exists, and when it does, it reshapes everything around it without a single fanfare. Number 13. You stop wanting revenge and start building irrelevance. Revenge is a tempting trap. It feels satisfying in the moment, like justice is being served and balance restored. People think retaliation proves strength, that it signals power, and that it teaches lessons. But in reality, revenge keeps you tied to the people and situations you should be leaving behind. It drains your energy, distracts you from growth, and prolongs the influence of those who have no place in your life. The truly powerful don't chase revenge. They shift the battlefield entirely. They make themselves irrelevant to the people who once tried to control, harm, or manipulate them. Irrelevance is the ultimate power play because it doesn't require confrontation or drama. It removes the very stage on which enemies operate. When someone loses their ability to affect your life, their attempts at control, sabotage, or intimidation collapse into insignificance. Building irrelevance means focusing on your life, your growth, and your momentum in ways that leave no space for interference. It's about raising your standards, protecting your energy, and designing a reality where the toxic, opportunistic, or manipulative people from your past simply cannot matter anymore. Unlike revenge, this approach doesn't signal weakness or inaction. It signals mastery. You've recognized that influence over your own path is far more valuable than proving a point to someone who will never see it. Irrelevance is quiet, calculated, and deeply frustrating to those who thought they could dictate your trajectory. They can try to provoke, manipulate, or challenge you, but none of it lands because the structure of your life, the priorities you've set, and the people you've aligned with are outside their reach. Over time, the ones who mattered and were aligned with your energy remain, while the rest fade naturally, without spectacle. In this way, you transform the need for revenge into sustainable advantage. You rise above the petty cycles of retaliation, and the absence of your presence becomes the most potent statement. When you stop wanting revenge and start building irrelevance, you don't just survive. You thrive, untouchable, and unconcerned by the noise of those who once tried to define your worth. Number 14. You realize the final victory is not being reachable anymore. The ultimate form of power isn't confrontation, persuasion, or proving anything. It's complete unreachability. When you reach this stage, you no longer respond to manipulation, distraction, or external pressure because you've structured your life and priorities in a way that makes interference impossible. Being unreachable doesn't mean hiding or avoiding responsibility. It means you've created boundaries so firm, so precise, that no one can penetrate them unless you allow it. This is the final victory because it removes the battlefield entirely. Enemies can plan, plot, and strategize all they want, but if they can't access you, their efforts are wasted. You become structurally untouchable, not through drama, confrontation, or spectacle, but through deliberate alignment of energy, focus, and environment. It's the point where influence becomes a byproduct of presence, or rather, absence. When you are unreachable, your attention is reserved for what matters, and chaos, manipulation, or toxicity simply cannot exist in that space. There's an incredible freedom in this realization. You no longer bend to the whims of others, no longer negotiate with fear or ego, and no longer allow external opinions to define your worth or trajectory. The people who matter, who are aligned with your energy, naturally adapt to this structure, while those who thrived on access, confusion, or control slowly fade into irrelevance. Being unreachable also transforms perception. Others begin to respect you not because you demanded it, but because your consistency, boundaries, and self-sufficiency make interference futile. It creates a silent authority that cannot be challenged because it operates outside the conditions of debate or manipulation. In this state, You're no longer a participant in petty cycles of confrontation. You're the one who decides when, where, and how engagement occurs. Your energy becomes sacred, your presence selective, and your influence undeniable. True power doesn't need attention or approval. It exists by design, impervious to distraction, immune to manipulation, and unstoppable. Realizing that the final victory is not being reachable anymore is the ultimate liberation. It is the point where you are entirely in control, untouchable in essence, and unshakable in purpose. Conclusion. Power, influence, and mastery are rarely found in noise, drama, or constant visibility. They live in the quiet spaces where precision replaces chaos, discipline outweighs reaction, and strategy surpasses emotion. It's in learning to control access, embrace solitude, and act with deliberate timing. It's in understanding that not everyone who applauds supports you, that some will only feel safe when you shrink, and that the ultimate strength comes from being structurally untouchable. True authority isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about outsmarting systems, protecting your energy, and aligning your life so that interference becomes impossible. Every move, every boundary, every choice becomes a tool of advancement. The brilliance of this journey is that it's internal first. Your power, your peace, your clarity, your timing, and external outcomes naturally follow. Enemies don't need to be silenced with confrontation. They are neutralized when you become unreachable, irrelevant to their schemes, and unstoppable in your own trajectory. Growth, influence, and ultimate victory are less about proving and more about becoming, a force that operates beyond opinion, expectation, and external control. The moments of silence, solitude, discipline, and patience aren't emptiness. They are the groundwork of undeniable authority, the quiet foundation upon which irreversible success is built. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that go beyond the surface. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to level up their perspective and reclaim their power. Your engagement helps us bring more truth, strategy, and unshakable wisdom straight to you. Don't just watch. Take control of your journey and step into the power that's waiting for you. Stay awakened, chosen ones.